So welcome to Pitch Deck Clinic, where today we're talking to Ross from TaxiGoat. So Ross, tell us about TaxiGoat. What's the elevator pitch?
So TaxiGoat, we're an app-based business that aims to connect customers with local licensed taxi companies. So if you think of Uber, but fused with Just Eat, we bring local taxis onto a single platform that allows the consumer to select which taxi company they want to book when they're trying to arrange for a taxi.
Okay, so for those of us who live in London, we probably remember Halo and a few others. So, it's the challenge is at first glance, it looks like quite a busy space, and it looks like a lot of the business is going to be about relationships that you have to create. So you have to persuade the taxi companies to come to you. Just tell us very briefly about that, and then I'll tell you about my experience looking for a taxi in the countryside.
Yeah, so you've just hit the nail on the head there. We are actually targeting the more rural areas. If you look at in the urban areas like London, like Manchester, like Liverpool, there is options available. So you've got Uber for a start. You've got your local black cabs. There are lots of taxi ranks where there are taxis sat there waiting for you. If you head out into the more rural areas, those options are gone, and you're sort of forced to have an idea of who your local provider is, and you may have one or two in your phone book, but there are probably 8 or 9 that are operating within your region. Now, you'll always go to the 1 or 2 that you usually use. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting your greatest of all taxi, i.e. your GOAT. So what we're planning to do is to create a platform where you can put your booking into an app. All the local providers that we onboard onto our platform, they get an opportunity to say whether it's something they want to do or not. If it is, great, that goes back to the consumer, and the consumer then chooses which of those companies they want to book. And it'll be automated on time. The price is set by our platform, so you'll pay the same price. It doesn't matter which taxi company you use, and that's visible up front.
Okay. So when I first saw the slide deck, I thought, oi, I see lots of, wannabe Ubers and so on. This is going to be tough. But then as I was going through the deck, I understood that it was for local operators. And then I remembered, I love to go running in the countryside in summer. And, sometimes the run is longer or shorter. And I ended up at some railway station in a village somewhere. And I remember last summer, I ended up somewhere and National Rail had cancelled the train. And there I sat at the station on what was becoming a cold evening, looking for a local taxi company going, this is madness. Why isn't there an app for it? So then when I understood that it was about local taxi companies, none of them answered their phones on a Sunday. I could only find 2 and was going, dude, this has to be automated. So I'm delighted to see that. So now I think, every slide deck and pitch has a story. So if the story, and I think that's why I explored this as a backdrop, if the story is about, it's not about London, this is about there are thousands or whatever it might be of local operators who don't have the capex to build their own apps, and it wouldn't make sense. Can you own, the countryside? So let's then have a look at the deck and see if it comes out from the slide deck or what we could do to make that jump out as the key thing. So with that in mind, let me share the screen. Number 1, connecting customers with local licensed taxi operators. Okay, I suppose it explains what it is. The greatest of all taxis. I mean, slogans are fun, right? TaxiGoat is fun, but maybe it's something about, taxis outside of London or something that indicate, because to say it's the greatest of taxis, I'm thinking the Uber XXXL or something like that, but in fact it's something different. So maybe think about the slogan. All right, so I think a couple of things jump out on the page. One is there's a giant logo, which is quite cute, and obviously riffing on that throughout. 2, The key thing that jumps out is, Just Eats meets Uber. And there is mixed feedback on whether you should say the Uber of or the Just Eats of, or whatever it used to be. It used to be the Facebook of, or then the Twitter of, or whatever. These things become fashionable. So on the one hand, it explains in an instance kind of what it is. If it's A meets B, it's a bit more complicated, but it is occupying mental space that could be used to say the fastest way to get a cab in the countryside or outside of a metro area or something like that. I think the next thing is that then looking at the list here, it's quite a list of things, right? So an app-based business, we probably assume it's an app. I would probably expect that the very first page would say the things that I didn't expect to know, and then show me how you fix that. So for example, if this page said there are 8,000, did you know there are 8,000 cab companies in the UK? Only 40 of them have an app. The rest of them rely on yellow pages and phone calls. TaxiGoat is going to change that. So then you've got my attention, right? And the next one is then you're going to show me the size of the market, and then you're going to show me how it works. So turning to the problem. So the problem here, of course, could be one of several classes of problems. It could be the problem for the consumer, or it could be the problem for the taxi company. So let's see what you're doing on this slide. So the passenger, so you've got the passenger and the taxi operator on one slide. Thought for you, how about if you put this on two slides? One of them is picture of me at that railway station, nobody in sight, sign saying cancel train or whatever, looking at, basically an end user looking for a cab with a phone or whatever going, whatever. And then you show how it's going to aggregate or do something and solve the key problems. It's open 24/7, connects you when that's open, not waiting for the person to pick up their phone while they're driving, whatever it might be. Bringing Uber outside of Uber areas. The next slide will then be the cab operator sitting in their office or in the car or something with the app that's transforming the way they do it. And now you've got some nice imagery, you're showing the problem and you're showing the solution. Very minor things. I'm a fan of all messages are positive messages. So, when I look at the slide, you've got a big X on the left and you've got a downward line on the right. That kind of, and everything's monochrome. So this could be really brought to life with something uplifting that shows the key proposition. Okay, so now we jump from the problem space to the solution. Great. I would probably expect to see a picture of a phone here. So you mentioned that you've got the app built or app website, whatever it might be. This is the time to make it clear to the investor that they are investing at the point you've got something built. So there, I would expect to see a person with a phone looking happy, several cars on it, however the thing works, to show me that you've built something. And then there are little speech bubbles or key points or whatever, connects with all local taxi operators that are signed up, finds things faster, shows you actual ETA, whatever it might be. So I guess, so now you've gone to, all right, the what it is. Maybe thinking about the last theme, and I know I've gone a completely different way in your slide deck, so sorry about that, but keeping with the theme, you're going to show there's the app for the driver and the app for the passenger. Is it the same app that you switch modes? Is it two apps? I don't know, but maybe if you showed me the picture of each of them with maybe the key features or something, what the customer sees, what the driver sees or the operator, whatever sees, then I'm bought in, it's enticing, and you're showing me you've built it, and the only thing waiting to get it live is my investment. And I think as the investor, that's one of the key things that I'm looking for. Okay, because otherwise, whenever you talk about something, I instinctively think you're talking about it because you haven't built it yet. If you built it, you'd be showing it. Okay, so I think the benefits to passengers then also naturally fits with the nice picture of the person standing there with the phone and you're giving them some benefits. I think, by the way, also your slide deck's about 30 slides, which is quite long. So one of the things I'd be giving feedback on here is how we can cut that down to maybe 20 slides. The data from PitchBook suggests that investors read a slide deck for 3 minutes, 40 seconds. So they're either hooked or they bail in that time. So you have to get them in to want to be in, and then you can do the clincher afterwards on the business plan, and it's SEIS and stuff like that. And you have to really hook them in those first slides. So you've now neatly segmented also the benefit to each party, and now maybe you're going to split this in the deck, which is TaxiGoat for passengers, benefits, app, whatever it is, TaxiGoat for operators, picture person, benefits over 1 or 2 pages each. Okay, so great. We're now switching to the business, and you've nicely signposted. Enough of that. We're moving on to the business, which I like. Some decks, one thing merges into another, so it's nice to have this sort of intermission. And now we're on to the business. Okay, so I think you've dived maybe into the second part of what I would have expected in the business. And I think the first part is what relationships do you have with the operators? Is it exclusive? Is it non-exclusive? What do you offer them? It seems to me that your proposition is largely based around having a critical number of operators on board. If you can close the first one in a particular area and they see business booming and the other guys are sitting at the local train station watching their cars zooming away and they're sitting at the station, then you've got your market sorted, right? So I think I would probably, as the investor, be going, all right, looks great. You've built the app, looks cool. I'm bought into the idea. Tell me how you're going to how you're going to sign up all these thousands of little companies. And that's the challenge you have, right? Because if it's going after black cabs in London, you've got one deal to be made. It might be super painful, but here you've got 8,000. I have no idea what the number is. Maybe we'll discover that on the next pages. You've got thousands of deals to do. How are you going to do those deals? Maybe that's, where it becomes non-scalable. So I think the business model is all about, obviously there's the unit economics, but who pays who? So perhaps I would expect to see this slide going, there's TaxiGoat, sign up lots of local operators, they pay us, we pay them, whatever it might be, get so much, free consumer, I don't know, but I think maybe a visual slide showing where the money flows, and then you're going to get on to show how you're going to sign up those local companies. Perhaps. Let's keep going and see. So I think the challenge with this slide is, firstly, it's quite busy. And I hate slides that force me to think, other than on Pitch Deck Clinic. So I think also you've probably included the areas like London and Uber and so on, or have you included those which are not your target market in these numbers?
So that is the scale of the total UK market. So that does include London and the likes. But we do digress and segment that as the pitch deck goes on. Because whilst TaxiGoat's USP is more ideal for the more rural market, that doesn't mean to say we can exclude those urban areas. The proposition still works in those more urban areas, but like our initial target is the rural areas.
All right. So my take is of course, there may be opportunities, throughout metro areas and so on as well. I suspect the investor's going to think if you're going head to head with Uber, life is going to be more difficult. So you're probably better off to differentiate and show that you're finding the other areas. And anyone who's been in the countryside knows that it's pretty dismal. The countryside's beautiful, but the state of taxis is abysmal. So I think this slide should maybe show, a map of England or something, or the UK, taking out the 3 or 4 key, urban areas, and then showing the state of the rest of it and how that is all your rich pickings, as opposed to, my going, well, it's probably 80% London and Manchester or, whatever. So the next thing is that I think ditch anything that's superfluous. So unless you're going to explore why there's a difference between male and female or different age groups, you don't need that slide. And if the revenue is pretty much unchanged year on year, ditch that slide. So, it's not adding value. So I think this is all about, it's a £7 billion, let's say it's 9.7 billion a year. So maybe it's a £3 billion or whatever it is market outside of metro areas. That's up for the taking, and that's our target. And now this is how we're going to get there. And that's so much more powerful than, having me try to unpick that from the slides. Okay, so smartphone ownership, for sure, ditch this slide. You don't need to tell investors who's got a phone. They wouldn't be investors if they didn't know that. Next one, scale of the market, the serviceable one. Okay, so now I think you've gotten to exactly the place I think I was suggesting we start.
Yeah.
So, do you need to start the 16 to 34? Really, everyone's got a phone. So if they haven't got a phone, then they're also not going to any of your competitors. The only thing they're doing is picking up a physical Yellow Pages or something at home and making a phone call. So that's, I think that's irrelevant. All right, so let's take a look at this. So we've started, presumably you told me 9.7 billion on 2 slides ago. So I'm expecting that the top pie is 9.7.
Yep.
So then you've got 17 and 4. I'm not quite sure why you split that. Maybe that's elsewhere.
It's just the way that the
see, rural, urban, minor, city and town.
These break it up.
Okay, so basically you're saying 21% of 9.7 billion, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so I wasn't that far off with my 3 billion guess. All right, so you're all, okay. I wouldn't bother with the 16 to 34 age group thing because, someone's looking for a cab, they're looking for a cab. Okay, because otherwise if you want to go to 16 to 34, then as the investor, I'm going to start asking you all sorts of questions about, why they're different to other demographics, why you're not targeting the others, are these going to uni or, whatever work they're doing that's different to the 35-year-old. Okay, so now the 400 million annual revenue, is that your revenue projection? Is that for the industry? Tell me about that 400 million.
So the 428 million effectively is 21% of the 9.7 billion and then 21% of the 21%. Does that make sense?
No.
So 9.7 billion pounds are spent on taxis every single year. 21% of that is in...
I got that. Okay, so now you've just taken the 21% because of the 16 to 34s.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. So, so tell me why you only, what was the key to focusing on only those?
On the 16 to 34-year-old market?
Yeah.
They're the biggest users of taxis. We need
but only slightly bigger. They're only 21% of the total. So you're excluding 79% of your market by, by just focusing on those. Now, it's one thing to focus, but all your revenue projections are just saying your market is only a fifth of the size that you could have told me as an investor.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a fair point. It's just it's just trying to find that balancing act between going at a huge, wide, open space, or do we try and
But I think if you're TikTok, clearly you're going to have a completely different app proposition if you're talking a 15-year-old than a 50-year-old. But a taxi booking app is a taxi booking app. I mean, it's not going to do any different. Some people might be at school versus uni, or at work, or going to visit elderly parents or whatever it might be. But kind of a taxi app's taxi. You might choose to spend your marketing differently.
Yeah,
But I think most also of your effort is going to be signing up operators, and there it makes no difference what the target consumer is. So in fact, most of your effort is invariant to the population, and therefore you may as well target everyone.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
All right. So I think over here, this is like a double-edged sword. I mean, apart from which the map is grainy and so on. Yeah. So my take, firstly, is it should be a map of the UK, with the little dots where you want to start. So secondly, for me, as I was going through the deck ahead of the call, this was like, oh, I get it. You focused on country areas. But the challenge is, for the investor, you've showed them it's now a $2.5 billion opportunity. But, between these two counties, it's going to be a £20 million opportunity. So I think I want to see two things. One is, narrow focus. My assumption is you live somewhere around here, otherwise you wouldn't be showing these. But number two, you have to show a national scale ambition very quickly. And that's why showing a map with, start here, then here is the way to go. Because otherwise, one of the challenges I see when I see, often might be a startup in Bristol saying they're going to have an app for, public transport, and they show just Bristol. You go, great. I'm sure Uber's deck showed the world. Bristol is very nice, but dude, if it's going to be worth my putting in 300K into the business, that then needs to be worth, tens or hundreds of millions later. And that only happens when it's national or maybe beyond. So you're definitely going to want to show the start local and go, at least, national very quickly in the slide. Okay. So now, okay, so I guess 20 million per annum. It wasn't bad. It was 20 million each, roughly. So, all right, cool. So I think I would probably put this onto the previous slide, saying starting, just so you're showing the London and a couple of areas where you're kind of not planning to go, and you're showing all of these other areas. You're going to start here, and even these two are 20 million a year each. So and I don't think you need to show the graph of the number of vehicles, because it's if it's not adding value, kill it.
Fair enough.
All right. So, and I don't know what a PHV is or an HC is. So, you're asking me to learn stuff that I didn't know and make it look like I'm an outsider. So, ditch those. Okay. So, I don't think you should try and compare with Uber for a couple of reasons. Firstly, Uber loses shitloads of money every month. So, and they're in endless amounts of trouble and turmoil. And secondly, I don't think we're expecting you to be like Uber, because, you're not going to own the 0-hour workplace contracts and of all these other things. It really is different. So, plus, I think people know or expected to know enough about Uber. So I think the slide causes you more trouble than having it, so I would ditch it. Okay. The next one is Ride. All right, so Ride's interesting because I've never heard of Ride. And I don't like companies where the names are misspelt, so that's great. You're ahead up over them. So that was, in fact, the very next question I was going to ask you, which is, hey, surely others are doing this already, right? So now you're going to All right, well, let's look through these, because I think what I would normally expect to see on a slide deck is a competitor analysis in terms of a 2-axis graph, which shows, ease of use or scale or something, and then, mechanization or cost or something. And you here, in the top right quadrant, and everyone else is somewhere around, okay? So I think what you want to do, if I'm an investor, I want you to be showing me you're clearly different to Ride. So let's unpick this, because I'm not sure you do, but let's have a look. So the closest similarity is that's negative, right? Allegiance of large UK private hires. Okay, so first thing I read is is it exclusive or is it not exclusive? Do you have to take business away from them? I don't know. Let's keep going. All right, so then you show their strengths. All right. Marketing and brand awareness are weak. So I think showing their weakness really shows me a key challenge that you're going to have, which is the fact that their market, well, let me ask you, why do you think their market and brand awareness is weak?
Ride are a conglomerate of the big private hire taxi companies that are not Uber in the main cities of the UK. So you've got Blue Line in Newcastle, you've got Dragon taxis in Cardiff, for example. So there's a number of these companies which have come together as a conglomerate to have a single app which works across each of those companies.
Okay. I think I have enough information now. So it seems to me that this slide could be, changed to go, the main competitor is Ride. It's a co-op of, taxi companies. Co-ops don't work, poor branding, mixed goals, no central ownership, no aggressive go-to-market strategy. We're going to change that with a completely different model. Yeah. But of course, so that is how you're going to show that it's not that they can increase their brand weakness and that takes away the limitation. You're going to show it's fundamental in their entire model. The co-op thing, with rare cases, just doesn't work. At least that's the case you're going to make. Mm-hmm. The counter argument would be that taxi companies fear the Ubers of the world, and they may be reticent to sign up with somebody who's not, who might ultimately be the major aggregator, and they lose out. And therefore they like co-ops because they feel that they've got a share in it. So, having shown that, whether it be in, Netflix, for example, is not a cooperative of lots of movie studios, it would be a disaster. No, Netflix is a branded proposition, and maybe you can even show that, as an example. Take Netflix, it's not 75 or 8,000 independent movie companies trying to cooperate to see who fits on the homepage. No, it's a slickly run, well-developed, tightly organized company to maximize revenue and eyeballs, and feature the most attractive propositions, whatever it is, with an aggressive marketing, and it's outrun all cooperative equivalents. The same will be for the taxi world. But of course, you then have to address investors who are going to query, will, and of course, as an actual business, you'll have to figure out whether not going the cooperative route will cause you any pain. We won't dwell on that, because we'll get next. Okay, so the next, you've got more competitors. Okay. It seems to me from Minicabit, if they the book in advance and you see the real-time map or whatever it might be, then that to me would come out most clearly on a nice axis, which is pre-book versus real-time or something like that. So be careful if you highlight a weakness that's easily addressed as a product update. Say if they've got a rubbish user experience, or they're not showing real time, I would be surprised. Either they've decided it's not a necessary thing, or as soon as you appear in the marketplace, their dev team are going to be set to work to do exactly that. So, I think investors are often looking for what's called the moat, which is something that is very difficult for others to swim across or get across, and is defensible by you, or defendable by you. Whereas a poor branding or weak app or something is something that is addressable until your moat is that you have sufficient operators on board and sufficient users that now you have an unassailable advantage. Okay, so I think you've covered exactly this a couple of slides back, so I would ditch this, right? It's not adding more. This is just a summary of what you told me before, and you've got lots of slides, so I ditch that. Next one is your differentiators. I think we've kind of covered that as well, so I'd lose this. All right, so now you've got your plans. So the plans is really important. I think your plans are much better off done as a timeline. So, you've got too many words here, and you've got these different blocks. So you make it quite hard. I have to work to figure this out. But had you had a timeline going, 2019, I assume these are now done because 2019's gone past. Do this. Okay, and now also, of course, anything that's in the past, I'm expecting you to have done. And I would, as the investor, start asking for data, how well it's gone. So if there's anything that is not done, then make sure there are no dates in the past. And I won't drill down on this, but I think, and you'll see this in quite a few of my pitch deck clinics, the roadmap should look like, a roadmap. It might be a graph that goes upwards, it might be a timeline, and now you're going to show things on that timeline. Okay, so I see the goat piece. Finally, I only realize that now on slide 21. The greatest of all taxis is the goat. All right. That's so clever. I think that should be on, it said the greatest of all taxis, and then I went off and said it was think about other things. But in fact, picking it out over there might be useful, but you might also find that another slogan is a more user-facing slogan. All right, and it might also be a slogan that if your goal is to sign up local taxi companies, they don't feel that you're trying to get ahead of them, right? So the greatest of all taxis means they're not the greatest taxi. Anyway, we digress. I think you said you're not, earning revenue yet. So I think you should be careful about showing the marketing progress when you don't have revenue yet, because you don't want to show too much marketing progress ahead of revenue. So this is a work in progress. So you may think maybe this isn't needed, but I think this is kind of like addressed on the slide so far. And I think certainly showing logos of other companies that we all know isn't useful, right? Because what jumps out on this page is LinkedIn and Facebook, not you. So I don't think this adds value beyond the general, progress so far. Okay. So I think this one also has got lots of things on it, including Google's logo, and I'm sure they're not relevant other than you giving them money for paid advertising or SEO. And the entrepreneur program is very cool, but not really. So I'd lose all these logos, keep things nice and simple. So where traction so far is the slide title, and now you're going to show key things that show there was nothing, and then there's a bit, then there's more, then there's a lot, right? And it fits that growth curve and the timeline. And the fact you're nominated for an award is great. I'm delighted. We've also got lots of awards on the mantelpiece. you know, you have to get to the award section of the website before we mention it, because actually nobody really cares if you got that award or not. It's all about, you know, where do I go for my next cab ride? Okay, so cut to you, nice branding. You're holding the app, which is a bit cut off. I'm not quite sure what the door is behind, and I'm not sure why you're leaning against the wall, but all right, cool. So you are showing your background as both a management professional and taxi operator. So you know business and you know your domain, which is great. I would probably have a sort of meet the team, and you know, you might show yourself as the main person, but there might be others in the team, or maybe there'll be, you know, sort of placeholders for the team that you wish to hire. I mean, who's built the app? You know, who's the marketing person? I think as the investor, I'm usually investing in a team. So to show a team, and it's also said people, and it's just got you. So I'm assuming they're more on the next page, but they're not. So I think, you know, if it's just you, it's great, but the valuation, if there's one person, is going to be less than the valuation if there's a team. The team has got continuity, it's got scalability, it's got, you know, you can do more things at once. So if there is anyone else, including showing me who built the app, obviously, unless you're coding as well, I'm assuming then you outsource the app. So I'd like to see how you're outsourcing, what's the plan to insource it, whatever it might be. Okay, so now you've got your forecasts. And by the way, I would usually put the team at the end, because you've shown me the market, and I think the next step then would be, you know, what the forecast is, and then the closing bit is going to be the team. All right, so here, I think it's quite busy. And you've got things pointing to other things. So you're definitely making me think. I think where my eye starts on this is your business projection. So you're showing graphs, you know, with the 20, 21, 2, 3. And so the first thing is, let's sanity check the scale of the numbers. So you're showing that you are going to get to turnover. So it was a bit less than 1 million next year, then 3 million, then 5 million. So those all seem plausible. I think my worry as the investor is why you're showing a 3.5, 4x, in fact, in the first year. I mean, from 21 to 22, and then like a 1.5x in the next year. So why I would have expected that your revenue would be accelerating, not decelerating. So for me, that is a red flag, and it shows that the ambition is local, and when you're satisfying a local area, you're not scaling fast enough, and in fact, I'm looking to see the opposite. So if you showed me in 2023 that your revenue was 50 million, I'd go, dude, you know, you've been smoking something. It's not going to get that fast, but I would like to see a scaling, an increase in the rate of growth in general as an investor. Otherwise, I suspect that you're saturating a market, and then, you know, the next year will even be a lower growth. And then I see the maximum upside from my investment, which if I'm an angel investor, I can get a 5x or a 3x return. That's great. But if I'm a VC, I'm looking for you to have a 30x return for me to make my money on my, you know, VC power law distribution, which is a separate topic. Okay, so now this table underneath seems to match this above, but I think you can ditch this because you're showing it over here. You didn't need to put it again, it's just noise. So now comes your gross profit, which seems to be amazingly high. It means you've got almost no cost of, you know, marketing or other things. But I would have thought that you're going to be spending a lot more on marketing, app development, and other things. So tell me about what is your gross profit comprised of, and why is it so high, and why you're not spending more on getting more traction?
So the cost of sale, that the marketing isn't classed in the cost of sale. That comes off for the EBIT values.
Okay.
So our cost of sale are very, very low. In all honesty, it's the electronic payments are significantly our highest cost of sale.
Okay, and your marketing expenses, I mean, you're doing all these deals, you're traveling around the country, you're signing up people, then you have to run ads to get people locally to know about it and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our external investment will be our marketing spend. I think I have got some info on the marketing spend in the following slides on what we're planning to spend on our marketing.
Okay, all right. I would expect typically a company to be underwater in terms of its profitability. Obviously you haven't shown net profit here, but I would expect you to be spending more to get to scale before you start looking like you're super profitable and showing growth tailing off. Okay, so next one, marketing plan. All right, so here, new customers is that marketing spend. So in 2023, you're spending only 140K on marketing, right?
Oh, 800K.
Oh, sorry, yeah, the 800K on marketing. Okay, so and that's reflected on the delta over here somewhere.
Yeah, well, yeah. So we'll have had external investment at that point, obviously, to pay for that.
Okay. All right. So now, CAC customers. Okay. So let's look at your customer acquisition cost. All right. So you've got a remarkably low customer acquisition cost, which is £10 and declining, which is fantastic. We assume you're going to monetize that quite soon after the first ride. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. And then you've got your percent as marketing spend. All right, that goes down. Okay, nice. Cool. So now we get to marketing, where again, you've got other logos on there, which I would look to not have. All right. I'm not sure that this one adds value. You might want to lose this one here because it's just adding more. Okay, so now we come to the investment plan. So I think a couple of things here. It is also forcing me to think. I think the other thing is I'm always challenged when people do show follow-on rounds because you really never know the future, right? And you're saying an exit in 2024 as opposed to keep growing the business. So I think I would be looking for, again, this could be visualized as a timeline rather than lots of boxes. And I would show, well, the other thing is, why do you need a Series A round? Because you showed me before you're making so much money that you don't need to raise more. And in fact, your growth was tailing off. So I think the Series A round and the growth reduction don't seem to align, and the amount of money you're looking at, at least in terms of gross profits, suggests you could be, using more of the money internally rather than raising more at that time. So I'll leave you to, think about how one, show this as a timeline, maybe not quite as far out, and then also showing a clearer need to raise more as opposed to, just because you'd like to raise more. I think so. Now let's look over here. So you have raised in the past 40K. Oh, you put, so when you say a pre-seed round, I mean, the 40K is normally done as a founder loan. Did you, well, you can't own more than 100% of your own shares. So it's a bit moot whether you put that in as equity investment or not, right? And then the grant, is that to be repaid, or is that just grant?
Grant, just grant.
Okay, so I wouldn't probably put this as a pre-seed round. I mean, it wasn't really a round, right? Yeah, and your founder investment, is that a loan, or would you want to?
No,
It's equity.
equity. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, you had 100% of the equity when you started the company, presumably, and you've got 100% now. So, you know, this doesn't really count. You've just still got 100%. And importantly, in fact, it's the opposite, which is that, you know, the founder currently has 100% of the equity and there's no other shareholders or anything to be repaid, which is great. You've got a clean slate. So now you're going to raise... and you've got, okay, some of this. All right, Carl, I think I would probably keep this simpler than you've got here. So your next round is going to be essentially part angel investment and part crowd round. So now, again, you know, you've got other people's logos and you've got two competitors' logos, which means you haven't chosen between them. So these logos really aren't adding value. And really it's just showing me here, you know, two crowd platforms and that you haven't decided between them. So I think I think you're also, so by the way, nice job, the maths are right. Whenever I look in a pitch deck, I see the maths. And so 350K on a 1.35 pre-money is 1.7 post-money. And of course, I take out my calculator and work out that it is 20.59%. So all good there. Then I don't think I would split between regional VC and the other. It's all a bit, you know, too much detail, TMI, and too much stuff. I think it's like we plan to raise half in angel/seed and half in crowd. And then, of course, you've got some sequencing detail. Is the crowd amount, including the angel, is the angel first in the crowd? But, you know, we won't go into that here. So then you've got your second last slide, which I think maybe recaps what you had before. I don't think you needed to do that. And then the last one, I would think, should actually have, you know, contact Ross and your website and your email and your phone number for more. Now raising, offering SEIS and EIS, contacting Ross. So this is the last slide, is the closer. And I think that was it for me. So thank you so much. It was a fab deep dive. For me, it was a wonderful learning on, you know, regional and the opportunity for the Just Eats meets Uber of regional. I hope it was valuable on your side.